Today we're reviewing the exciting Hoka Rocket X2, which has a 36-31 stack height, 5mm drop of a PIBA type foam on the softer side, but not too soft. Of course, it has a carbon plate, version 4 from Hoka. The upper is an engineered mono mesh with an extensive array of overlays. I've taken them on the indoor track here in Park City for 3 runs and also to the roads. So it is a significant change from the Rocket X1, and I think a highly competitive shoe. We're also going to compare it quite closely to the Vaporfly next percent. The first version is the one I have here, as there are significant differences in the platform widths, which affect the stability. Hi everybody, Sam from RoadTrailRun from the railing here in Park City, where it's starting to feel like spring. So let's talk about the Hoka Rocket X2 launching March 15th, $250. First things first, it has nothing to do with the original Rocket X1, which was lower stack, very firm, very rigid, literally one of the most joyless super shoes, and it was several years ago. So Hoka took their time here to come up with this beauty. So we get an all-new PIBA type midsole here. It is not the beaded variety. And to my pressing, the upper layer feels a little bit firmer than the softer layer. We have a 36mm heel, 31mm forefoot. So Hoka didn't go all the way to the full 40 as many shoes are going with, but they do keep a 5mm drop. So the forefoot at 31 matches the other super shoes. Of course, we have a carbon plate and a new design here. We'll get into that. So in terms of weight for that 36-31 stack height, Hoka's coming in at a really fine 7.18 ounces, 203 grams, 7.4 ounces or so in a US 9. What's really interesting about the shoe is I tend not to like 5mm drop super shoes. Really have a hard time kind of rolling them. But here, everything is very smooth, even with a 5mm drop. I've run them 4 times, 3 times on the indoor track here, and a very fine, for me, 10K on the roads of Park City. At altitude here, we're at well over 2,000 meters, and it was raining. This really moves smoothly, even at slower paces. And I think part of that is due to this, to the width of the midfoot here. There's no carve outs, there's no goofy slots or any of that. And what that does is it provides a very stable, very linear flow forward. So just to give you an idea, to compare a little bit here, if you look at the Nike Next percent, and I have version 1 here, and its midfoot platform, its midfoot sits at only 55mm, whereas here in the Hoka, 75mm wide. As far as our heel width, we're at 85mm, so we're wider than the Nike at the heel, wider at the midfoot. The Nike being only 75mm. So what does that do? Well, that gives you that very nice linear flow and lots of stability. In terms of what else Hoka has done, you'll notice here the midsole sidewalls, and you sit down in them, are quite high on the lateral side and somewhat lower and straighter on the medial side. What that does for me is it gets me onto the big toe for toe off very nicely. This is one very smooth flowing shoe. In terms of the foam feel, it is softer than the Zoom X here, a little bit softer, but it's not one of those super soft foams that mismatches with the plate, as I found the Endorphin Pro 3 and the New Balance Fuel Cell SC Elite 3, where the plate and the foam just don't quite meld together well for me. Here it melds together very well. There's some other things here, and we'll continue sort of with the comparison. to the Nike, we have I measure about 5 millimeters of foam and outsole. It's about a 1 millimeter thick outsole. So the plate sits up a little bit above the outsole, whereas in the Nike, it's almost directly above the outsole. So this leads to a bit more of a cushion, less slappy feel up front. Maybe not quite as explosive off the front as Nike, but certainly very, very comfortable. As I said, very, very stable. As a 36-31 shoe versus our Nike here up around 38-39, 8 millimeter drop. I thought I would struggle a bit getting off the heel at some of the slower paces. None of that whatsoever. Now let's talk a bit about the upper here. So it is a mono mesh type upper. The fit for me in the US 8.5 is true to size. The hold is superb, especially at the rear with no heel counter. Your foot sits right about down at here in the heel counter, and then you can see the rising walls. We have an unpadded tongue, but with very nice ridged laces that are just soft enough so there's no bite. And in sort of a callback to the famous Speed Goat trail shoe, we have a bit of a gusset here because this mesh is not the stretch variety. We do have a gusset tongue. You can see we have a, let me pull it out here. You can see we have a gusset tongue that's sort of a fairly thick material, and I think that's important. And on the same on the other side, we have an array of overlays. So this is a relatively simple mono mesh upper with beautifully arrayed overlays. Now, in terms of the fit, and here it is on my foot. True to size at 8.5. For me, my usual. A bit snug through the last part of the lace up. So how do they run? Well, just superbly. This is a very smooth riding shoe. I would have no hesitation training in it. We'd have to keep an eye on the rubber durability, but you can easily train in this super shoe without having to force your way past the plate. Now, in terms of the plate, yes, you do feel the it's kind of hump a little bit, but far less than, say, for example, the Asics Metaspeed 1, and this is a less kind of overly prescriptive kind of feel, say, compared to the Adidas, the Adios Pros, and you do get a nice final kind of roll off the front. So it's just a very, very smooth operator that I think will suit many for the marathon who want sort of a more smooth flowing, pace adaptive kind of shoe. I am sure it will be fast as well, as Hoka athletes have had a lot of great results in the shoe already. It's out now, and you can find shopping links in the description. $250. I also have a full written review over on RoadTrailRun.com, and we hope to also get some of our speedier RTR contributors in it for a multi-tester review real soon as well. Thank you very much for watching. The shoes were provided at no cost by Hoka. Have a great run.